Okay, welcome back to a Wednesday noon book study. And thanks to Bruce Gores, Goers, who vociferously recommended we do the book of Zephaniah. So we are in the book of Zephaniah today. We'll take what I assume will be 3 Wednesdays to do this for the 3 chapters of Zephaniah. It's a brief book. Um, and just have we'll try to cover it in its entirety, and we'll go even verse by verse because, like I said, it's not a long book, and dig into it and sort of see how it goes. If something happens during our classes and we extend it out further, then we certainly can do that. But we'll take at least the 3 next sessions to cover a chapter at a time. And if it turns out that we need to slow down and take even more time, we can certainly do that. But it's my plan to begin with that we will be doing this in just 3 pieces. Even the chapters themselves are not particularly long. And so I think this is a very doable amount of information for a single day. Okay, Zephaniah. So let's get a little bit of context here. The context, context is always important, but let's start off very simple and then get a little deeper so we can hopefully understand more of what's being said, because so much of the meaning of what's being said is directly connected to when and why. Zephaniah is one of what we refer to as the minor prophets. When they're broken into major prophets and minor prophets, understand that it is not about their importance, even relatively so. It is about their length, and relatively so. The major prophets are long. Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, these are like 40, 60 even chapters, whereas things like Nahum and Haggai and Obadiah are 2, 3, 4 chapters. They're brief. So they are smaller, quicker, and a lot of them are grouped around a very similar premise. The call of the prophet is to speak God's truth to his people. And the truth that needs to be repeated, apparently over and over again, is to repent. Repent and return to the Lord. Repentance, as a concept we've mentioned many times and in many contexts, the Greek term metanoia can be literally translated into turn around or to turn away from something. You are headed into sin. You are headed into destruction. You are headed into judgment. You are headed into estrangement from God, estrangement from one another, estrangement from yourself. Turn around. You are going the wrong way. Turn away from the sin, from the selfishness, from the wickedness, from the foolishness. Turn back to the holiness of God's law and the gracious love of his presence. So this is very much a walking down the wrong road. How do you make progress when you are walking down the wrong road? You turn around and you go back. So this will be the repeated theme of just about basically all of the minor prophets, and Zephaniah is certainly like this in that regard. Understand that the all the minor prophets will be written during one of the eras of the divided kingdom. So Israel will divide after the reign of Solomon into a north and to a south. As a reminder, because it can get confusing, when the term Israel is used, we sometimes need to make sure we know what we're talking about. Sometimes Israel means everybody, but Israel is also the name of the northern kingdom. The northern kingdom, with its own set of issues and problems, with its own governance, and it's in a different king than is there in the south, which will be referred to as Judah. But sometimes, and somewhat confusingly, all of God's chosen people will still be referred to as Israel. So we just have to kind of be a little bit careful with that. It's not always identified if it's just talking about the north, if it's talking about everybody, if it's just talking about the south, if it's talking about everybody. So to the degree we can, we're going to try to keep those in line. The northern kingdom will fall first. Their wickedness and sin is evident from the very first king, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who will be referred to, his name will become an epithet later on. Like, you might be bad, but you're no Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Or you're almost as bad as Jeroboam. So he kind of sets the standard. And to be perfectly frank, there are kings in the north who do stuff probably worse than Jeroboam. But because he sets the pace, he's the one who says, you know what? I think we should have worship in the north separate from Jerusalem and the temple, because that hardly seems fair that we have to go to our rival kingdom. So I want to set up altars and stuff. I should even build a temple of my own up here in the north, and that'll be the coolest. And that really kind of sets the stage for a lot of the problems which will continue north and south alike. Both north and south have been charged by God to follow him and his ways. And that's the way it's been from basically the beginning. As they have strayed, as they have gotten sloppy, as they have lost a sense of self-discipline, they have started in ways small and large to go down the wrong path. A lot of these have to do with following the examples of neighboring countries and empires. This is not really the time of the nation state, so these are basically like empires and kingdoms and stuff. But these are different cultures with different religions, some of whom are quite horrible to consider. We will actually get a little oblique reference in Zephaniah 1 about what some of these negative customs, some of these negative religious customs might actually look like. You don't have to go very far geographically from Israel to find the center of the worship of Molech and Baal, both of which super enjoyed child sacrifice. So what tends to happen is a ugly and sad combination of our broken human hearts have the tendency to wander, kind of just cuz. And when you've got examples around you that give you a direction to wander in, you start adopting some of the perspectives and customs of the people that you see and you might admire. Israel at this stage feels in many ways very much like a petulant teenager. They have matured from their early infancy of full reliance on God as their father, on God as their king, who is leading them with the pillar of fire and cloud by day through the wilderness and bringing to a land of promise, where the reliance on God's provision is basic and clear and obvious. And that's not to say that they don't do bad and wrong, because there's plenty. But the relationship there seems very concrete and it feels very direct. As they become established in the promised land, I think we can almost extrapolate a maturity and a growing, sort of like the child who is super dependent. You know, you're 6, 7 years old and mom and dad really run your life. And that's not to say that 6-year-olds behave perfectly well all the time. They can be little monsters. But, you know, if mom and dad don't give you food, you starve to death and die. If mom and dad don't have a house for you, you live out in the rain and cold. You know, if mom and dad don't take you somewhere, you don't get there. If mom and dad don't give you clothing, you're naked. I mean, that kind of thing. But as you become a teenager, you start doing a lot more on your own. You start asserting your own responsibilities and kind of testing your own limits and ways that, you know, maybe you're trying to figure out who you are. Maybe you're trying to make decisions about, well, this is how I was raised, but do I want to keep doing that as an adult, or do I want to experiment and try other things? So the reason I'm taking this kind of long rambling direction is so much of the consequences that God's chosen people as a nation will deal with stem from what feels to be like a teenager's complaint. We want a king. We want to be like literally like all the other nations. Mm-hmm. I'm not making that part up. And that feels to me like the teenager complaining, well, why do I have to go to bed at this time? My friend doesn't, you know, you don't love me, or you don't trust me. And all my friends stay up till this late. All my friends are able to listen to this kind of music or watch this kind of show or to go out and do these kinds of things. So Israel complains that they want a king. They have a king. God is their king. But they see the other kingdoms and empires around them and they become jealous. Oh, that looks cool. I want to be like them. And like a teenager starting to exert independence over their parents' household rules, they start rebelling. I want to do the things that I see my friends do that seem fun or interesting or mature to me. And so Israel demands to have a king, and God allows them to have a king. And he says, I'm going to give you what you want, and you're going to hate it. And so they pick a king in the way that every other nation would have picked their king, who was the biggest, baddest, strongest dude out there. And they pick Saul. And Saul is the absolute wrong choice, but he makes the most sense in kind of that worldly, I'm a teenager who doesn't really know better, but I like bright, shiny things. Fast cars are cool. And so God had a king in mind for them, David, but their impatience. Again, I'm not making this part up. Like, that's not my interpretation. He says you were impatient. If you had been patient, I would have given you the one that I had chosen. But like a petulant teenager, they want what they want, and they want it now. And so it starts the process of breaking away from that more obvious, concrete, dependent relationship on God, and starts trying. It's now going to be a lifelong habit of trying to emulate what they see in the rest of the world, rather than listening to God say, I want you marked as mine. You know, as long as you live in my house, our family does blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, that's what God's been telling them. Mm-hmm. You're different. You know, I don't care what the neighbors do. They can stay out. They can stay out all night if they want to, but we go to bed at a reasonable hour and we eat our vegetables here, that kind of thing. And the funny thing is, the older you get, the more you wish somebody would give you a bedtime. And the more you realize you should have been eating more vegetables all along. Yeah. But youth is wasted on the young, and they get in repeated trouble. So much of the trouble of Israel, so much of their idolatry, so much of their wickedness so much of their breaking God's law comes from this other nation does that. I want to do that too. Maybe they think that empire is larger than us and it seems more successful. And if we want to become larger and more successful, we should emulate them. Or it could be that seems exotic, or that seems exciting, or that seems fun, or that seems cool, or I married a woman who grew up in that, and she's telling me that's the way you ought to do it, and I figure out why not. And that keeps happening again and again and again. So, what starts off as we want a king to be like all the other nations eventually turns into, even through the Davidic line of succession, it breaks almost instantly. And the Israel as a whole separates into two. And the line, the bloodline of David, the familial line of David resides in the south, in Judah, where Jerusalem is and the temple. But the successful, like better, smarter, stronger, but also more like the other nations, how they pick kings, sort of gravitates to the north. Jeroboam actually starts off as like the best and brightest guy of the country. He's just not David's kin. He's like the best general and the smartest advisor. And the actual heir is sort of a dummy. And there's many ways to think, gosh, man, I might have voted for Jeroboam myself. But it turns out that is like a lot of things. When we start substituting our judgment for God's judgment, we don't see all of the ends. He does. Something might make sense to us, and we can still be very wrong. The kingdom splits. The kingdoms start to become less and less like each other. They become, from brothers who don't always get along to more like cousins who kind of dislike each other to occasional straight up rivals. And they start drifting off in their own ways. A lot of those ways are pretty similar, adopting foreign customs, adopting foreign religious practices, even adopting straight up literal idolatry. But the more steps they take away from the presence of God, it's going down that wrong path. And we've also brought this up before. The nature of sin often gives us this frightening, sudden realization where we didn't realize how far away we had gotten until it's too late. Like not paying attention on a path into the woods, and before you know it, you're way off. Or not paying attention when you're kind of bobbing up and down in the ocean and the waves, and before you realize it, the current has pulled you way down the shoreline. So both the North and the South will be in such disarray. It only takes sometimes a generation or two. But bad leadership on top of bad leadership, allowing bad things to happen on top of bad things happening. And both nations will become very corrupt, very foolish, very wicked. So we're now deep. By the time we get to Zephaniah, we are deep into the line. Israel is fallen already. And you would think that would jerk a knot in the tail of Judah in the south. Like, oh, shucks, if that can happen to them, we better get our act together. And it sort of kind of does. You have a succession of kings, some of whom do good and most of whom do bad. And occasionally some are kind of neutral and just sort of boring, but they don't do enough to fix things. So, imagine a country with bad leadership year after year after year. And eventually stuff starts to sag, and then stuff starts to break, and then stuff gets worse. And then fixing it seems like an insurmountable job. So now we're not trying to find somebody who's really awesome and good. We're just trying to find somebody who can like make things not quite as bad as they are right now. Right? So Zephaniah is writing during the rule of Josiah. Josiah, who was a good king. It's so bad that the book of the mostly Second Kings, but also Chronicles, First and Second Chronicles, basically details the story of a lot of these issues and a lot of these different kings and the bad stuff they did and blah blah blah. And basically, every time a new king comes up, it's like, and so, so and so died, and his son so and so took the throne, and he was also loud.
Yeah, he walked in the ways of his father.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
And he did not remove the Asherah pole, whatever. So a lot of these guys are just basically dismissed out of hand. And he was also a bad king, and he was bad king, and he was bad king. It's the good ones that actually stand out. If you were to look at a list and have them just listed out, the number of good kings to bad kings ratio is really distressing. And the good ones, like, kind of only here and there. So Zephaniah is connected to two of the best and two of the last kings in Judah. So Zephaniah, in verse, is this verse? Yeah, in verse 1. The word of the Lord came to Zephaniah, son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah. Hezekiah, who was a good king of Judah. So Hezekiah, who instituted massive reforms to try to get God's people away from idolatry and back to the faithful worship of God. And Hezekiah is one of the tops on the list of good kings. The problem is you have a really good king who does really good things, and his son is a bum. And that seems to, it's like you rebuild the sandcastle just in time for the next wave to come and wash it away. So even in this relatively brief period of time between Hezekiah, who looks to be his great grandfather of the prophet, to living in the time of Josiah, there's already been a lot of bad. So the southern kingdom of Judah is in a mess again. So this is the time frame that Zephaniah is writing in, and this is kind of where we are with what the state of the southern kingdom is. The southern kingdom has been kind of on its own for a little while now, and it's nearing its end. So, the people living at that time, they don't know that. When there were people living during the fall of the Western Roman Empire, did they know they were living in the fall, or did they kind of figure it was going to keep on going, or this might not last, but it'll be a while, or I don't know. But the southern kingdom it does not have long at this point. But the great thing about this is Josiah is a good king and a good man. We can take portions of his story from Second Chronicles, and one of the things that we will find is that the temple had been basically abandoned at this point. It had been overrun, it had been co-opted, and it had been neglected. And Josiah insists that it get cleaned out and reset. And in doing so, and a lot of this is like, I remember Hezekiah doing such good things, and I want to do this too. In doing so, they find the book of the law, which had been lost. That's how bad the southern kingdom has gotten. They didn't even have the book of the law for who knows how long. And when he finds it, it's this big deal. And he's like, he calls the whole nation to repentance, and we're all going to come together, and we're just going to read this thing out loud, so we can all hear it all over again. And there's, the sackcloth and ashes and repentance and all this kind of stuff. But that should remind us of how bad it must have been. So Zephaniah is writing during this wider time frame. There is not an exact way to reference for sure when during the reign of Josiah Zephaniah is writing. Some scholars will argue it's in the beginning, and some will argue it's closer to the end. I tend to think the beginning or closer to the beginning makes more sense. And as we read chapter 1, which I think we've all sort of done, and we're about to talk about verse by verse, and this is why we were sarcastically thankful to Bruce Goers, Goers, for giving us such a downer of a book to start off with, because it's like fire and brimstone and everybody sucks. The whole first chapter hits you like a ton of bricks because they're in such a bad state of affairs. What makes sense to me is how scholars have suggested the prophetic words and preaching of Zephaniah are a part of encouraging King Josiah to find the temple, clear it out, and to rediscover the book of the law, rather than the other way around. To me, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the text does not explicitly state that. But to me, it makes a lot of sense that the prophet starts preaching fire and brimstone, and the king, who wants to be a good God, this is enough of an impetus for him to say, I got to take this seriously. We got to do something about this, and we got to do something about it now. There are positive changes. Now, I'm not referencing Zephaniah, the book, so much as I am the time period as referenced in 2 Chronicles. Josiah is able to institute so many reforms that God puts his judgment on hold. Because Josiah was faithful, judgment still comes, but not right then. Unfortunately, it won't take too much longer. Josiah's son is not technically the last king of Judah, but he might as well be. He will be taken into captivity by the Egyptians, put in a cage so he can watch. I think that's before they take his eyes. But he can watch the puppet king that Egypt has put on the throne make an even worse mess of things. And basically we have from there to the very end, in the Babylonian captivity, we're going to have like, let's call it Vichy France, where the Nazis have taken it over, but then they put a puppet government in charge. So this is a reprieve that happens during the rule of Josiah, and it's basically because Josiah tries so hard to get the people to repent and to do the right thing, and while he's alive, they do. So as we start hearing these words of judgment, I would like to think that these words made a specific, concrete difference right then and right there. Okay. So the last thing to kind of reference that about these this little quick genealogy that Zephaniah gives. Other scholars have pointed this out, and I think it's a fair point, that Zephaniah writes very, like, his judgment is very kind of top down, like the workings of the government and the way that the nation as a whole is operational. Some of the other prophets will write a little more common man, personal behavior, a little earthier. And if you think that Zephaniah is the great grandson, is that right? Great grandson or great grandson of King Hezekiah, that means he is of royal lineage himself. So it kind of makes sense. He he's writing to the people in power because he's one of them,
Mhm.
or he knows them. It is he's basically writing. He's not too far away from the Jeremiah is roughly around the same time frame.
Mhm.
So if you want to make a connection to somebody else. Okay. The word of the Lord came to Zephaniah, son of Cushi, the son of Gedaliah, the son of Amariah, the son of Hezekiah, during the reign of Josiah, son of Amon, king of Judah. I will sweep away everything from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. Oh. Thank you, Bruce. Sometimes, like, if we have a Pauline epistle, and like a hard one, like one where he's clearly unhappy and he's upset. Paul always starts with grace and peace. I think about you and I'm glad.
Yeah.
Now let me list all the ways you're really doing a bad job.
Yeah.
So, even Paul, that kind of has a reputation of being a bit of a hard case. First thing we get, I will sweep away everything from the face of the earth, declares the Lord. I will sweep away both man and beast. I will sweep away the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea and the idols that cause the wicked to stumble when I destroy all mankind on the face of the earth, declares the Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that seem reminiscent of anything to you?
Yeah, during Noah's days.
I think the first, and we can liken it to other things, other big sweeping judgments, but to me, this has echoes of Noah's flood, especially the sweeping part.
Yeah.
Because that's what a flood does. Like we get this little water kind of washes everything out. So this is a very comprehensive judgment and a comprehensive list of destruction. Like even the birds don't make it. Everything, and when I think about something being swept away, that feels very quickly definitive. Like whoosh. It's not a piece at a time, or you will like get weaker and decline. To be swept away feels very quick. So all of mankind and basically every living thing is under judgment, which will result in being swept away. I will stretch out my hand against Judah and against all who live in Jerusalem. I will destroy every remnant of Baal worship in this place, the very names of the idolatrous priests, those who bow down on the roofs to worship the starry host, those who bow down and swear by the Lord and who also swear by Molech, those who turn back from following the Lord and neither seek the Lord nor inquire of him. Yes. So, again, this is becoming familiar with the rhetoric of the prophets, the minor prophets in particular. Jerusalem is a place, it's a city, but it also tends to mean everyone in the south. You can use Jerusalem and Judah almost interchangeably at times. They're not, but they are used in the way that like a foreign news broadcast might say, Washington, D.C. today decided to impose economic sanctions on this other country. So they say Washington and they mean Washington and all of America kind of interchangeably. So your capital city representing the whole country is not that uncommon for us to think about. But sometimes it will mean these specific cities. So we have to kind of parse that at times. I think this being rhetoric, this being trying to make a point, there's no specific distinction between Jerusalem and Judah, if only to point out that Jerusalem does not escape this for being special. Jerusalem, which will sometimes also be referred to interchangeably with Zion, the Mount Zion, where the temple ought to be, and it's kind of the city, and it's kind of not the city. And again, these all get kind of wrapped up together. It's kind of like, why would people in Europe call us Yanks? Like, I'm not a Yankee. You know, my dad, you know, anyone who was born north of Sanford, to him was a Yankee.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, it's just, this is a way that it can be kind of wrapping up all of you, and that means you. I think that's kind of how this is being used. Because Jerusalem has this holy place element, not just historically, but even as God treats his people, Jerusalem is always set aside as being special. That there's a sense, I think, of saying this judgment that's coming to everyone, it's coming to everyone. Yes, I mean you too. So just in case you thought, well, he's not talking to me. When he says everybody, he means like those guys. But this is everyone. And the judgment, which feels so harsh, sweeping away and destruction and all of that, well, we're getting some of the rationale referenced here. There has been Baal worship in Jerusalem, not like just on the fringes. You might have a weirdo out in the woods doing who knows what. No, right in a city with the temple, God's temple, and you are worshiping Baal and Molech, the child murderers? Are you kidding me? So that's kind of where we are here, and we get a little list. Baal worship, idolatrous priests, people swearing by Molech, people who are worshiping the starry host, which might feel like a poetic reference, but is kind of a catch-all phrase for these kind of astrological idols. I am consulting this, like there's a different culture and a different faith, which is consulting the stars. And, you know, my God is the sun. My God is the moon, you know, blah, 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 blah. So all of these are being kind of, the net is covering them all. And then the last one, even if you are not overtly seeking out the dumb idol from a foreign nation, those of you who won't even look at me, those of you who will not consult me, those of you who won't give a darn about what I've said, you're a part of this too. There feels very much there is none that are holy, not even one. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Even those of you who are not actively causing harm are doing no good. Be silent before the sovereign Lord, for the day of the Lord is near. I think I think I read this somewhere. I'm not saying this is not my scholarship, because I've studied this so thoroughly. I came across this, but the day of the Lord is a phrase, occurs in Zephaniah. I think it's like more than anywhere else. And if it's not more than anywhere else, it's like right in line. So, and especially for only being 3 chapters long, it references the day of the Lord a lot. And the day of the Lord has a meaning that is specific and a meaning that is expansive all at the same time. It is maybe worth noting that the last book of the Bible that we did during our noon book study was the book of Revelation, which in many ways represented the culmination of the day of the Lord. For the prophets, when they speak of the day of the Lord and his judgment, in a general sense, that is speaking of an apocalyptic end of times, eschatological final judgment of the world, humanity, and creation. The day of the Lord is God coming to earth to set things right for good. As we talked about in the book of Revelation, the C.S. Lewis talking about like creation, so like it's play on stage, and the author appears only after the play is complete. Only after the curtain has fallen does the author come to the stage. So the day of the Lord in that regard is a final, it's like the capital D day of the Lord, all this kind of stuff. Now, what can be difficult to wrap our heads around and take some care, or at least some humility, to not fall too heavily on one side or the other, is that the day of the Lord can also mean consequential days less than the end of time. D-Day in June 6, 1944, represented an indelibly significant turning point within World War II and within contemporary human history. As the Allied Army sets foot en masse on continental Europe for the first time in years. And this would be the beginning of the end. But it wasn't the end, because the Nazis, when the VE Day isn't for a year, and there's going to be a lot of battles to come. And even once you've got landing craft on Omaha Beach, and they had to fight and survive. Just landing wasn't enough. But even the name D-Day, and it is intended to reference doomsday. Now, a doom is a finality of something. And when we think of the term as a phrase, doomsday, we think about like Armageddon, and it takes on, again, those end of times eschatological day of the Lord. But there can be a doomsday that we mean to also reference something super important and final, just not final, the end, but an end. A day where everything changes, a day where everything is held in the balance, and you don't know, a consequential moment where something might be changed forever. So the day of the Lord, even in the time of the prophet's writing, can refer to an impending judgment that is going to be really consequential, but it's not the end of time. Can you imagine what's a sort of consequence that would feel like a doomsday for Judah, the southern kingdom, but it's not the end of the world. And this will be, Babylon eventually. But this could be like the destruction of the kingdom. This could be the loss of your independence or your freedom or your life. Now, that's a big deal, but it's not the end of the world. And we're speaking in literal terms, because even that, you know, it's not the end of the world as a phrase that we use, and we mean it. We use it again, kind of rhetorically, but there is a literal meaning to that. So what's being talked about here? Which is this? Now, I think that there is a pretty clear reference to the end of time because everything is being swept away. But there's a reason why we liken these consequential moments to doomsday, because it's like a little precursor. And we underscore how serious it is by connecting it thematically to the really, really, really biggest thing we can think of, which would be the end of the world. So I want to throw out to us that Zephaniah is warning Judah of judgment that is both temporal and eternal. He is talking about the end of the world, but he is also talking about a sooner doomsday, which will be the end of Judah. And it may not be the end of the world, but it's kind of like the end of the world. He's swept away. Be silent. We're on verse 7 now. Be silent before the sovereign Lord, for the day of the Lord is near. The day of the Lord has prepared a sacrifice. He has consecrated those he has invited. On the day of the Lord's sacrifice, I will punish the officials and the king's sons and all those clad in foreign clothes. On that day, I will punish all who avoid stepping on the threshold, who fill the temple of their gods with violence and deceit. So that could be a reference to the end of days, but I think it's starting to narrow already. We've used apocalyptic imagery about the end of time, but now it feels like we're starting, like, it's almost like he's saying, well, now that you know what I'm talking about, let me make it real for you. Because now we're going to talk about, the king's sons and those who are making these sacrifices. So I think we're now that we ought to be scared about the end of time, that fear should motivate us to consider the gravity of our present situation. And it's maybe not for nothing that we're talking about officials, king's sons, foreign clothes. Again, Zephaniah, who that's probably how he grew up. This is the circles that he likely ran in. He was maybe a part of this wider group. And the judgment is being spoken to the people that you would kind of know. And how easy it is for people to get into positions of authority and assume that that means they are above consequence. And they're being named specifically here. Matter of fact, you're not only not above consequence, a lot of the consequence is because of you. On that day declares the Lord, verse 10, a cry will go up from the fish gate, wailing from the new quarter, and a loud crash from the hills. Wail, you who live in the market district. All you merchants will be wiped out. All you who trade with silver will be destroyed. These are references to parts of the city. I don't happen to remember which one is the fish gate, but Jerusalem, the ancient city, and this is still evident, you can still find places, like most ancient cities, protected itself through the use of a wall. So you build a wall around your city to protect yourself, because if you've got stuff, then somebody might want to come and steal it. or to hurt you. So you protect, one of the ways you protect yourself is you build a wall. But a wall is no good if you can't get in and out because you're trapped. So you have gates in your wall. And those gates tended to get names associated with a person or a place or their function. So a fish gate might be where the fishmongers sold fish because maybe it was closest to the water source. In the old city, even now, as you're traveling in different parts of it, they've got this certain spots where sometimes you can see it, you can see the remnants of it, and sometimes it's just like, no, that's where it was, because it's long gone. But this gate and that gate and that gate, and because there were multiple gates, depending on your function, you might be at one versus a different one. And he's kind of like pulling pieces of the city in ways that are not vague and abstract, but are very specific. You know, like if you've ever seen a video or something, or maybe you've been at an event like this, but like at a concert with a band that's been on tour, and they're like, how are you doing today, Lakeland? And the crowd's supposed to go, yeah, he said our name, Lakeland.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they'll like build something in the like. They must ask their publicist, okay, tell me something about Lakeland. I've never been there before.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Right.
say something about swans.
Yeah.
And then make fun of Mulberry. And so maybe the lead singer is like, yeah. And we got here, but we ran up in the wrong place and it didn't look very nice. And somebody said, yeah, you better get out of Mulberry. And everyone's like, he knows. Like, yeah, but I knew I was in the right place when I saw all the swans. And so, like, yeah, he's one of us. He knows our city. Zephaniah is calling out specific places that if you lived in the city, you'd be like, oh, that's me. It feels very abstract. You know, the city is under judgment. When you start saying, you know, Dixieland will be underwater. And Lake Morton will be destroyed. You start making these references that are very specific, it starts feeling very concrete and very real. At that time, verse 12, I will search Jerusalem with lamps and punish those who are complacent, who are like wine left on its dregs, who think the Lord will do nothing, either good or bad. Their wealth will be plundered, their houses demolished, they will build houses, they will not live in them. Though they plant vineyards, they will not drink wine. So again, I think we have pulled back from the apocalyptic end of days, but to a judgment that's saying something catastrophic is going to happen. If you are able to plant a vineyard but not drink its wine, you're still alive. And the world is still existing. But that can either be poetic, you will plant vineyards, but you will not profit from them. And that's okay. Or maybe you're going to plant vineyards, but as someone's slave. Because slaves don't get to drink the wine of the vineyards they work in. Don't know. But you who have been living off the fat of the land, all this stuff that you've accumulated, it's not going to be lost. It will be taken from you, plundered. Plunder is the spoils of war. So if you have a battle and the soldiers fight, and then one side wins and the other side loses, especially with the losing side, either they run away or they're dead. The winning side will loot. They will take stuff and they will plunder. Like you might plunder off of the dead body of your enemy. You might go through his pockets and find coins and stuff. You might go into a house of this conquered land and say, I like that painting, and pull it right off the wall. So it's not just that you've lost the enjoyment of these things or they are lost to you. No, someone bigger and stronger than you is going to come take it from you as a sign of the fact that you have lost. Not a thief. Thieves don't plunder in that regard.
Mhm.
Victors plunder over the losers. So already we're starting to get hints of what kind of judgment this is going to be. Not just like fire from heaven, but this sounds like an invading army that's going to beat you. Searching Jerusalem with lamps to punish those who are complacent. I almost get the Diogenes image in my mind. If you remember the ancient Greek philosopher who walked around with a lantern, supposedly looking for an honest man, and he was making kind of a satirical comment about the corruption in society. This is almost the opposite. I'm walking with a lantern, not making a rhetorical statement that honest men can't be found. I'm looking for you because you're hiding, and you're not going to be able to hide from me. You could say, I'm going to come with a flashlight and check under beds and in closets for anyone who might be hiding from my judgment. This is very threatening. You can't avoid it, and you can't flee, and it sounds like there's no place to be safe. They're actively looking. Imagine like one of the World War II movies where the Nazis are looking for Jews who are hiding, and the tension of the scene where maybe they're like up in the attic or they're down in the basement, and you have the Nazis like looking all around, and you have like a split screen, and will they find us, and we're holding our breath and we're trying not to look. Like, this is what's coming. This is bad. This should be very frightening. The great day of the Lord is near and coming quickly. The cry on that day of the Lord is bitter. The mighty warrior shouts his battle cry. The day will be a day of wrath, a day of distress and anguish, a day of trouble and pain, of ruin, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and blackness, a day of trumpet and battle cry against the fortified cities and against the corner towers. Your strength will not save you. Your infrastructure will not be enough. Your castles and your moats and your walls and your garrisons will all fall. This day will be filled with sadness and terror. The cry, that line in 14, the cry on the day of the Lord is bitter. The mighty warrior shouts his battle cry. So imagine, I mean, this is the English, and I haven't checked the Hebrew or whatever, but how we use cry in English with very, very different meanings. Both have a connotation of something that's loud, but one could be aggressive and sharp, the battle cry, and one is sad or sorrowful, the cry of a baby. The cry of a baby is not a battle cry. Right. The cry of a baby is saying something is wrong and you need to make it better. Or the cry of someone whose heart has been broken is very sorrowful. And maybe it's just the English, but I kind of catch this like the cry, the bitter cry, but also the war cry. And those are happening at the same time. Fierce and despondent simultaneously. I am maybe just a wuss, but there is a moment in an air show that I hate. Not that I go to a lot of air shows, but I've been to air shows before. And there's a moment that is super popular in air shows where they do a flyover as low as possible and as loud as possible. And I hate it. It's an overwhelming sensory experience. It's also why, like, I'm not a much of a concert goer. I can't be too close to, like in a big concert, to the bass speakers because I start feeling it in my chest. Remember the term during the Gulf War, shock and awe? They were doing these flyovers with these jets that it's kind of debilitating. You know, that kind of noise. And there's some of it's the frequency and some of it's the depth, the bass. I mean, it's just, but it goes straight over you and you almost just can't do anything for a second. That's some of these images that I'm kind of feeling in all of this. Like this overwhelming sense. To grab a little Tolkien for a moment, little Lord of the Rings lore. But one of the most direct enemies of the good guys, these dark riders, who will be referred to as the Nazgul, they are ring wraiths. The evil, the evil Sauron has basically corrupted kings of men from long ago with these magical rings that, let's just say, sucked their souls out and it turned them into almost like fearful ghosts that are kind of physical and kind of not. And in the battlefield, they scream. And being in their presence, having them breathe on you, apparently results in terror. They don't have to touch you, but the terror is so overwhelming that armies were losing because of it. So to be that scared, no matter how big and strong you might be, there's just no recourse. Whether it's momentary or permanent, it's just like there's just nothing. It's like your brain doesn't even function, your body doesn't move. It psychologically, it's one of the reasons why some, I think it's like they suspect like some kind of a biological response, you know, some sort of evolutionary response that humans as prey animals, that there is a psychological reflex of freezing in a moment of great fear, like when the we say fight or flight on adrenaline, but there's also a freeze. If you were ever playing hide and go seek as a kid, and they were right on top of you, but they hadn't found you, and you felt some kind of weird desire to pop out and say, "Here I am," not like ha ha ha, but like I can't take it anymore. Or why do police shout freeze? What criminal would stop? Like, but it kind of works. They say it because it works. There's some instinct within us at a very basic level where we freeze up. Well, I mean, even if it only is momentarily, but it's like there's some kind of overcome with fear and dread, which is sometimes maybe more terrible than the things we associate, like, oh, painful, being hit or struck or whatever. But the dread. I will bring such distress to all people that they will grope about like those who are blind, because they have sinned against the Lord. Their blood will be poured out like dust, and their entrails like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold will be able to save them. On the day of the Lord's wrath and the fire of his jealousy, the whole earth will be consumed, for he will make a sudden end of all who live on the earth. And your riches won't save you, and your position won't save you. Your job or your title. You will grope about, and it will spill out of you until you're just a quivering bowl of goo.
Sorry, you should have been like,
How encouraging.
you're so theatrical.
This is theatrical, man. This is, so I go over this because it's not just the fact, I mean, he could have said all of this in less than a paragraph, right? He could have said, you have sinned, you've been idolatrous, judgment is coming, and it will be bad. But we get all of this stuff to try to bring about a sensation, to bring about images. And I think this sense of dread, and that is honestly very powerful. When FDR said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself, he was trying to be encouraging, like, don't stop now. We can fight this and we can win. But it actually speaks to kind of a psychological truth. The fear of a thing is often far worse than the thing itself. The fear of the thing changes our mind, changes our actions, changes our behaviors more than the actual physical pain or loss that we're trying to avoid. And so many times we worry about stuff, and even when we do experience it, it's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as I was afraid it was going to be. Like, so that sense of our minds taking in the dread and just how strong that is. This is a chapter of dread. So if I'm, kind of going over the top a little bit here, it's because I think the chapter is intending to take us over the top. We need to feel the dread of our consequences. For the sin is that serious, and the judgment is that real. And sometimes the only way to get someone's attention, and it might be the last club out of the bag, I'm not advocating this, but sometimes a slap across the face is the only thing to snap you out of it. And that's kind of where I feel we are with this chapter 1. Anything else?
I'm sure to thank Bruce for that.
Thank you, Bruce. Bruce Gores, by the way. Bruce Gores. Okay, we good?
Thank you.
All right.
Wow. Should have been in the Revelation.
Oh, I watched it on my
Did you?
yeah.